Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's MDICx webinar. We're delighted to be able to share this presentation on an overview of the CDRH 510K improvement project. My name is Stephanie Christopher. I'm the program director for MDIC's Case for Quality. And it's my pleasure to introduce our two speakers today. Cisco Vicente is the program manager for Case for Quality at CDRH, among many other responsibilities. And Jeff Slutsky from N-Sigma Solutions has been working with CDRH on this program. I'm going to turn things over to Cisco to introduce Jeff and the improvement program.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you very much for the introduction and for everybody who's attending online right now. One of the things that the center as a whole has really been committed to is trying to make the 510K process, the program, more effective, more efficient. And there's lots of activities going on within the center, lots of different pilots that the center has been engaged in. I know there's been significant guidance work in terms of trying to provide more clarity or options through the process of the program. So it's a very dynamic set of activities that are ongoing. One of the things that is part of that process is what Jeff is going to introduce and talk about today, some of the efforts that he's done with the center to help develop means and mechanisms for really assessing the impact of some of the pilots and changes that we're working towards. So I wanted to really put that in context and preface that for the participants on the line right now. The center is engaged in a lot of different ways to really try to improve the engagement, the experience, and the effectiveness of the 510K program. So this is one aspect of it. And with that, I will turn it over to Jeff from N-Sigma Solutions and let him kind of highlight some of the work he's done. And then we can go back to where that might be beneficial in some of the other activities we've got going on. Jeff, turning it over to you.
Yes. Thank you, Cisco. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time zone you might be in. I'm going to describe a little bit about the work I have been involved in with CDRH to improve the 510K program. And a little bit more specifically, one of the approaches taken to do that, namely discrete event simulation of the 510K process program. So many are aware of the MDUFA goals set earlier, MDUFA IV for back in 2017 for total time to decision (TTD). There's a few definitions down below to the left for some of the things in this presentation. That being 108 days beginning with the 22 cohort. And so in anticipation of meeting those goals, many efforts really were started, two of which listed here. One is the first one, which I'm going to talk about, and the other that is also ongoing is the Lean Six Sigma approach that the Office for Quality Management has begun several months ago, 6 months ago or so. So again, I'm going to be describing just the first bullet item, the 510K improvement. The approach I took, and not by myself, if you look down on the bottom left, you'll see also a company called KM Tech. That's my partner I worked with on this project. So this was not only my effort. Took a Lean Six Sigma approach, focusing on waste per that acronym, I guess, maybe, Tim Woods, and all that involves listed down below. Additionally, it became apparent to me that the traditional Six Sigma tools, that approach was not going to be sufficient for this quite complex transactional process, the 510K program. And so it became clear that what would be very helpful would be a simulation model of the 510K program. And with the benefits listed below, the opportunity, the ability to do sensitivity analysis, so the effects on the number of holds, on FDA days, let's say, number of third-party traditional submissions, and so on. What would be the effect of changes in the parameters that govern kind of the speed with which 510K review proceeds? What if scenarios to be tried in simulation before making any kind of pilot, running any kind of a pilot in which people would be asked to do things differently in the center, and certainly before any policy change would be implemented. The ability to try these what-if scenarios in simulation and simulate years of performance in a very, very short period of time, 5 minutes, and see if any proposed ideas would be worth taking to the next stage, to the next step. And of course, included in there, what are the conditions necessary to achieve the MDUFA goals? And the center intends to use the simulation also for future negotiations taking place on next MDUFA. So the process that followed here pretty straightforward. Construction of flow maps, value maps, value stream mapping, process flow maps, and the maps begin with a receipt being receipt of the submission in the White Oaks and Landover mailrooms where the submissions arrive initially. SI is a substantive interaction. I don't think I have that down below there. Then capture of the historic performance for various cohort FYs and the parameters that have been measured about the 510K, capturing those parameters as well that have been extracted from actual performance. Additionally, of course, and very, very importantly, is the capture of behaviors of people in the loop, because this is an extremely transactional intensive process, and it's not the idea of a manufacturing process here where there are machines stamping out parts at a certain rate. These are people who are thinking, making decisions, weighing risk in every step they take. And so I met with many lead reviewers and consultants and interviewed them regarding how they do their work, how they task switch, how much time is spent task switching. Is that a task in itself of switching from one task to another, and so on. By the way, I don't know that I mentioned, but this was only done for medical device, just 510K. Well, I guess that defines it right there. And then finally, with all that information, construction of a simulation model, and then validation of the model against actual performance going back from 15 to 18, and it's continuing now into 19. At the extremely high level, these are the major blocks that occur in the flow. Receive RTA, substantive review, final review with a decision of some kind, and the creation of a workload at that start circle on the left, creation of work in the simulation model so that these steps can be applied to something, some entity that flows through the model, being a submission. And from data, in this case from FY15 cohort, extracted the random variability in arrivals of submissions per day. So could be as high as 10 a day, very infrequently 2 a day, very infrequently 30 or more a day, but about 10 a day being received. And this was all submissions, it wasn't by type or review track. So the ability to generate work now for the simulation model, and then comparing the performance of the sim against known performance, previous FYs, and looking at the number of percent submissions with proceed interactively, substantially equivalent decisions at the substantive interaction stage, number of specials, number of third parties, number of traditionals, and so on. So in feeding the simulation model with what the center actually experienced, in this case, FY15, FY16, comparing the performance of the model, and there are many, many metrics that are being compared, but I'm just showing you total time to decision. That's a major one. And the decision was plus or minus 2 days is an acceptable agreement given the amount of variability that exists. The model runs many, many times, and so we're able to create a confidence interval around these metrics. And you can see below, about plus or minus a day, plus or minus about 2 days. So we had higher confidence, good confidence that the simulation model could recreate what was seen from 15 data and from 16 data. Now the question was, okay, if the model is somewhat self-consistent, how well does the model estimate actual 16 using actual 15 and actual 16 arrival data? And again, the results, the comparison was plus or minus 2 days, which was considered to be adequate agreement. I'd like to give a little demo of the simulation. You can watch it play out. This is not the simulation running. This is a capture of the simulation running. You can see pieces of those big boxes that I listed: submission of the review, refuse to accept, substantive review, and so on. And some of the detail inside the simulation model. This is a small piece of some of the logic that goes on inside. If anyone's familiar with ARENA, Rockwell International has a package called ARENA, which does this type of discrete event simulation, perfect for transactional processes. A large number of input parameters to the sim being shown here by division. A lot of this work is, prior to the changeover in divisions to, recently taking place. As far as a graphic, not terribly interesting here. More interest is in the resulting output of the model, the numeric values. But just to get an idea of submissions entering, going through RTA, the ones that are leaving RTA, some of them go on to substantive review if there is not a refuse to accept. Some of them are refused, go back to industry, to the submitter. You can see some of those flowing up now. And many of those files that are flowing up are part of the back and forth that takes place between FDA and industry for each particular submission for whatever set of reasons, clarification of information, responses to AI letters, consults that return with new information being asked for. So that's what happens to those. And some of them never come back. For example, the 180 days on an RTA, if there's no response, those submissions don't come back. The simulation has gone through really many hundreds and hundreds of submissions at this point, and you have the ability to change these parameters as the simulation or in between simulation runs. So you can change, for example, the percentage of PI substantively equivalent and so on by divisions, and see what the effects of that might be across all the divisions, and cumulatively what the effect on total time to decision for the center would be for ODE, Office Device Evaluation, different name now. And then look at what the output of the simulation provides, a large number of parameters being output, from which decisions are made. You know, was this scenario useful? Was it not? And the idea that there are multiple simulations, multiple instances of the simulation run, so that, just if I can go back a slide, no, so that we're getting statistics. You know, these are not crisp deterministic runs each time. There's random variability allowed to take place in many aspects of the process. And so that variability is accounted for in some of these responses as confidence intervals. I just wanted to give you a look at what goes on in the simulation model, its input parameters and its output parameters, and how it was constructed. So again, a number of what-if scenarios. In this case, we're looking at the effects of the number of proceed interactively, substantive equivalent, you know, and so on, specials, third parties, different types of submissions, different review tracks, looking at the effects, you know, the what if over the next few years, the percentage of these events, these things, you know, took on these values. One thing we learned from this was that given this set of scenarios over those years, no, we would not meet the 108 days at the end of, you know, for the FY22. That was a very helpful thing to do, because in a very short amount of time, we were able to determine that, you know, these are not the right values to hit for these parameters, or there might be other parameters that have a bigger effect on total time to decision. Another what-if scenarios was the number of additional information needed, the implementation of an approach called quick reviews, number of specials. Now, how you make this happen is a whole different story. How do you affect the number of specials arriving and so on? But the first step is to see what the impact would be if we could manipulate these parameters to these percentages. And in this case, we demonstrated that we could meet the MDUFA 2022 goal of 108 average total time to decision. So very helpful again. This, you know, the simulation runs in about 5 minutes, going through many years of simulated performance. So a very high description here, I realize. But some of the takeaways, some of the conclusions, that there were changes that can be made to how the 510K program operates. The simulations indicated that some of those proposed changes would be worth taking the next step on, maybe a pilot, and some were not. However, it also indicated that the improvements seen, are only incremental. No dramatic major changes in reduction in total time for the scenarios considered. So what we're looking for, and why this relates to case for quality in one sense, is we're looking for revolutionary improvement, not incremental. And the case for quality is one of those approaches to bring that revolutionary change in the 510K process. And that was started before my work. Cisco has been working on this for a long time, as well as Stephanie and many, many others who are putting in a lot of hard work on CFQ. The other area where the simulation model is beneficial for CFQ is as these various working groups come up with ideas on changes to be made to how 510K progresses, to what submissions contain, and so on. We now have a tool, the sim model, to try them out and see what the benefits would be, what the decrease in total time for FDA, for industry time, what those would be. So again, a way to try out the changes that the working groups might come up with, and determine which ones are sensible to try and take the next step on, and which ones are not. So again, very brief overview of the work done to improve 510K process, major metric being total time to decision, and also trying to put together a tool that can be used to help with negotiation of subsequent MDUFA agreements. So I'll end right there and hand it over to Cisco.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for running everybody through that. So one of the things that I wanted to just touch on for a few minutes, and then we'll open up to questions, is some of the work that's being done actually now as we keep evolving case for quality and our program in 2019. The center is actually committed, and they are putting in an enormous amount of effort and resource to leaning out a lot of our processes. As I think Jeff had mentioned, that is a strategic goal that the center has. It just makes everyone's life easier, it makes the processes more efficient and effective, and that's an ongoing effort. What we have now, though, is an opportunity with the tool that Jeff had mentioned to really figure out what are the key points in the process and the activity set that are contributing to really some of that time in perspective to the full timeline, and leveraging the case for quality and a total product lifecycle view of what's going on within the organization and the product to really rethink how do we make that portion more efficient and more effective, and then test that out in terms of potential impact it would have to the overall process, while at the same time we test out the modification or the change in the case for quality pilot programs. If we go on to the next slide. One of the things that we're trying to really drive towards as a agency, as center, and you'll see that it is not unique to case for quality, it's also one of the resounding themes if you think about our pre-cert program, is to be a lot more objective and data-driven as a just regulatory body. How do we collectively enable more visibility, more information, improved responsiveness within, industry, because you guys are really the ones who are leading the charge and have the first line of visibility into issues. Control around that, getting the right information at the right time, both for you, your patients, and for us as the regulator. Taking that and using that to really simplify our processes, make it more error-proof, improve the way we exchange information, maybe how do we do the review differently. Really focus on increasing value collectively, not just for the FDA reviewers, but also manufacturers who are going through the activities in the process and what they're submitting, and more importantly, really for the patient. How are we assuring that they are getting the right confidence in what has been done, what has been reviewed from the agency, and are getting the best products, the right changes, the right improvements out there as quickly as possible. That's the totality of the goal, right? It really is about really driving innovation around how we assure that safety, how do we assure access to those products in a way that is going to meet the needs, I think, very differently than how we've done things before in the past, and give us an opportunity to accelerate some of these technologies improvements and drive the better patient outcomes. Next slide. So I think one of the things that we've challenged people to do internally, and also this challenge would go out to anybody who's listening and any of the industry participants. How do we think past the current processes for the submission, for the review? What is going to make that evaluation of that product a lot more effective in a way that is efficient? How do we change everything from maybe how we are looking at data, how we're submitting at data, how we are adopting new technologies or incorporating different approaches earlier in the design stage, earlier engagements? How are we looking and developing design? How is that being performed? And Jeff's been key to helping really think through that on our end, so that we can actually take a much more holistic approach to that assurance of safety and effectiveness that we are responsible for across the product spectrum. Next slide. So one of the things I think that I'd like to lay out and leave everybody here, and I think Jeff touched on it again at the very beginning, we are seeking the revolutionary, right? We cannot sustain doing the same things over and over again, especially as products get a little bit more complex. Digital health has recognized that the inclusion and incorporation of software actually brings a whole new dynamic to things. How do we change the paradigm on the way the agency performs its work, the way maybe industry approaches and monitors things, so that it is a better system and a better value for the end patients, which is, I think, where everybody has been driving to, and which is the foundational, really objective of the case for quality. So as you guys are moving forward, as some of these efforts are expanding in the course of 2019, we'll be providing more updates as we're progressing. There'll be more opportunities through either MDIC forums or these webinars or other avenues and venues for engagement. If there's thoughts and ideas, please feel free to reach out and really share perspectives or involvement, so that we can really craft a system that is going to deliver on that patient outcome, and really, from a collective regulatory standpoint, improve the whole system. Next slide. And I think with that, I'd like to thank everybody who was participating and engaging here. And maybe there's time, actually there is, for questions.
Great, thank you, Cisco and Jeff. And for those of you who are listening to us online, you can submit your questions either through the chat box that I've been communicating with all of you through, or through the Q&A box. While we're waiting for questions to come in, maybe I'll start with a question to both of you as far as what's next with this work then?
Well, with regard to the simulation and the 510K improvement approach, the simulation is being handed over to someone at FDA so that they can then run this for themselves. So whenever a what-if question comes up, it can now be handled more internally. I'm a consultant with FDA, I'm not an employee. And ongoing changes that would be simulated, and if they make sense, piloted. My effort, I expect, in the near term, is to become more closely associated with case for quality, and the simulation tool would be one thing that we could use to evaluate potential changes of a revolutionary nature. Cisco, you probably have a lot to add to that too.
Sure, thank you, Jeff. So this is actually going to be, a very dynamic, multi-pronged set of activities that are moving forward. One of the things that we had an opportunity to do is present this construct and concept of the activities here at the MDIC forum that was hosted in February. We had an opportunity to brainstorm around key areas that we know from an FDA review side we're looking to see confidence and assurance in. That data has been taken back internally. We have also been working with our internal teams to really rethink portions and what we're trying to get out of pieces of the review to really modernize what it is that it is delivering. How do we get that information in a lot more consumable format, usable format? And then from there, what are the pieces that really give the review teams that level of assurance and confidence when they're tackling, we're tackling it portion by portion of the review. That provides us then not only insights into the data and how it can be presented, but what are the efforts and activities or the practices that we need to have assurance of or demonstrated in companies' processes, which then is another factor of feeding it back into our maturity assessment process to then figure the next set of appraisal methodologies or the next scope of practice areas that should be included in order to give us that visibility and confidence. The work that Jeff's been doing with us in terms of really thinking through and identifying what those practices are like within an organization that we can then also feed into that appraisal. Our key, getting together with some of the industry teams and coming up with ways to test some of that is something that we've also been engaging on and are continuously always looking for options and opportunities. So it is a lot of different moving pieces that are going to come together, but each one's kind of targeted one subset of what's needed of the bigger whole.
Great, thank you. Question coming in online from one of to Cisco. Do you see medical device prices potentially reducing as the 510K process is streamlined and perhaps more devices come onto the market as a consequence?
So not to speak or speculate on where the prices change, but as we focus more on, quality, the value driven, I think there's a lot of opportunity as a whole as more, of these products can get onto market with the same assurance a little faster. The goal, I think that Dr. Stern has kind of put out in one of the vision end states of Case for Quality of being able to create a comparative marketplace around device quality. It starts to become more realistic. And that does in turn drive the opportunities for some of those improvements, those cost reductions as time goes on. It's not just this activity is going to result in that on its own. There's probably a lot of extra things that will come together to align that, but it's an end state that I think we've all really want to try to keep our eye on and keep moving and progressing forward. It's just going to be, I think, a few years down the road as all these pieces start to come together and the dynamic within the whole ecosystem. It's not just in manufacturers, it's also us, it's also payers, providers, patients, starts to shift.
So I might add, you know, one of the things I've been impressed, this is Jeff, impressed with in terms of this effort is it truly is, the major goal of this truly is to help improve the quality of our of devices developed, designed, manufactured, and so on. I'll use the term side benefit, not, I mean, it's a major benefit, but you know, by the way, is that if these things come about, submissions can go through a lot more quickly as well. So, you know, I really commend Cisco on the effort he's made to emphasize that, you know, this is about helping to improve the quality of our products, not to reduce, you know, the only goal here is not reducing total time to decision. And so if you believe that quality of product is related to price you can garnish, you know, then you can get, then yeah, there's a relationship.
Encourage others to submit questions if you have them for our two panelists here. Meanwhile, I have a question. Cisco, one of the things we've talked about within the Case for Quality and specifically within the VIP program is the incentives for participation in that program. For those of you that aren't familiar, the Voluntary Improvement Program for sites that volunteer to take part in a maturity assessment program conducted by CMMI, they do receive some regulatory benefits from that, but when in the pilot year, most of those benefits were geared more towards folks that were in the PMA space. And I know we've been exploring how we might extend some additional benefits within the 510K space. How will the work that you're doing here help inform those discussions as we operationalize the VIP program?
I think that it's directly informing those efforts in that activity, right? This work is foundational to that. We did a lot of work that I think behind the scenes MDIC coordinated. We've worked a lot with manufacturers before that pilot was released. So, you know, a lot of that wasn't necessarily seen to or visible to a lot of the participants or, you know, even the broader community up until now. When we decided on, you know, what we would modify from a regulatory activity standpoint in order to support the engagement that companies were having, the extra visibility and transparency that we were getting, the granularity of what was going on within the organizational processes, there was an extra degree of confidence that said, okay, given this, we can really change the way we do our reviews to this format, which supports that continuous improvement drive, and we could do this in a much shorter time frame, still getting the same level of assurance and confidence. That is what really collectively turned into that larger regulatory benefit. Those same principles apply for the 510K space, and we knew that that would be potential. One of the reasons we didn't start with, you know, 510K activities or outside of the manufacturing was now we're talking about the design activities, design practices, those efforts that sometimes are happening behind the scenes that we see, you know, the finalized versions of through the review. That's a messier category that we wanted to give time to really prove out the construct and the model before tackling and moving into, because we would need to make sure that we could do this effectively, have confidence that it delivered, and then now we can add the complexity of that design focus, and that's really where we are right now. So all these discussions, you know, are similar to what we did with the manufacturing pieces. How do we inform the better activities? How do we inform that maturity in those practice areas? How do we inform the level of control needed to demonstrate to the agency the kind of data that we could possibly exchange, and then bring that to the table and say, with all this and the level of confidence this gives us, here's what we would really just need to see now in the review. And how quickly we can get that done then is dependent on that. So what everybody's seeing now with all this is really a lot of what happened, you know, a year or two before the pilots were announced for the case quality pilot. They're just more visible and more engaged. But all these activities are really how we get to those end goals.
Great, thanks, Cisco. Well, we still have a few minutes for folks to submit their questions. Jeff, while we're waiting for additional questions, if you can advance to the last slide, I'll make some announcements about some upcoming events that you can engage with. Our next MDICx webinar will be coming up on May 15th. That will be an update to the Case for Quality Voluntary Improvement Program. We are in year 2 of the program, and we're currently, MDIC is partnering with FDA and CMMI on operationalizing that what was a successful pilot into a full program. So we'll be providing an update on that, and also talking about year 2 appraisals during that webinar. Our next Case for Quality Forum is coming up on June 20th. That will be at MDIC's offices in Arlington, Virginia. And you can learn more about the Case for Quality initiatives on the MDIC website.
Question, Stephanie, is there a way for people to get in touch with either me or Cisco if they have additional questions, or through you? How does that happen?
Certainly, and we should have put contact information on the slide, but certainly if there are additional questions, folks can send those to me, and I'm happy to put you in touch with Jeff and Cisco. And then I will also mention as well, someone had asked about slides. We will be posting the recording from today's webinar as well as the slides on the MDIC website. Give us a couple days to a week to get that posted, but I will send an email to everyone that was registered for this event when those slides and the video are available. All right, well, I don't see any additional questions. Cisco or Jeff, do you have any final remarks you'd like to make?
So I can start, but go ahead, Jeff, you want to go?
No, you first.
Okay. So I really want to thank everyone who was engaged and participating, as always, the people who continue to help drive and support some of this effort. The collaboration really does inform us, and it makes a lot of the difference in terms of what we're able to really focus our time and energy towards. So please, I encourage everyone to, again, reach out if possible. There are, even at the the links that are here, there are multiple ways to contact, reach out, and engage with us. All that input is valuable, all the opportunities, and we're always looking for additional volunteers to help with some of the pilot teams and programs as we move forward. So don't hesitate to really throw your hat in the ring, or just reach out if there's any questions or concerns.
And actually, I just had another question come in regarding the 510K approval process and the VIP program. Cisco, do you see the 510K approval process being tied to the capability maturity of Case for Quality participants?
I'm sorry, which one, the VIP program or the?
I think he's referring to the capability maturity, the CMMI appraisal.
So I do. I think, and that's one of the things that as we get more feedback and learning, it's a little bit more critical. I think there's going to be, from just overall risk management standpoint, certain demonstrations of capability that we're looking to see. What that means, we're still kind of developing and working with that. That does not mean that we can't apply some of the same constructs and principles that we did beforehand with regards to rethinking how the submissions get done. But that level of visibility and granularity that's tied to that capability maturity construct will let us know how we need to manage that risk. And that may mean, okay, we spend a little more time on this portion of the review, it may mean we do this other activity differently or this level of monitoring. But that's part of what we're establishing, testing, and developing over the next year.
Yeah, a few things to add. First of all, of course, yes, again, thank you everybody involved, MDIC, CMI, everybody in the webinar here, and Stephanie, she does a tremendous amount of work to pull these things off. So thank you, Stephanie. I'm impressed with the voluntary improvement, and I guess I really recommend those of you listening consider being involved in that, and the appraisals that take place as well. It's from what I see, a very good way for self-assessment or for assessment. Actually, there are embedded members in this, so it could be self-assessment as well. But get involved in it and use it as one more way to assess where your company is in maturity of product development and device development, and use that not only to help streamline, 510K flow, but to improve the quality of within your own organization and its maturity. So give it a thought.
Great. Thanks, Jeff, and thanks, Cisco. And thank you all for joining us today. As Cisco said, there's lots of ways that you can reach out to us and get involved and engage with us. And certainly if you have additional questions for the panel today, and you don't have Cisco's contact information, you can certainly pass those along to me, and I will make sure they get to Jeff and Cisco. But thank you for joining us, and I hope you join us again for our next webinar next month. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.